1. Platonism. What if everything we see is just a shadow of something more real? Platonism begins with the ancient Greek philosopher Plato in the 4th century BCE. He believed that beyond this physical world lies a realm of perfect, unchanging forms, abstract realities like beauty, justice, and truth. In his famous allegory of the cave, Plato describes prisoners chained in a cave, only able to see shadows on the wall. One escapes, sees the real world illuminated by the sun, and realizes the shadows were mere illusions. The message? Most people live in ignorance, mistaking appearances for truth. Platonism urges us to seek knowledge beyond the senses, to use reason to uncover deeper truths. It shaped Christian theology, Renaissance art, Islamic philosophy, and modern mathematics. Later thinkers like Plotinus expanded it into Neoplatonism, blending Plato's ideas with mysticism. Whether you're talking about universal ethics or the beauty of a perfect circle, you're touching Platonism. The real is the ideal. 2. Aristotelianism. What if truth isn't hidden in some higher realm, but right here in the world around us? Aristotelianism comes from Aristotle, Plato's most famous student, who lived in the 4th century BCE. Unlike Plato, Aristotle believed that knowledge starts with observation, not with abstract ideals, but with what we can see, touch, and study. He explored everything from biology and ethics to politics and drama. One of his core ideas was the golden mean, the belief that virtue lies between extremes. For example, courage is the balance between recklessness and cowardice. Aristotle also laid the foundations for formal logic and scientific inquiry. His influence stretched across the Islamic Golden Age, medieval Europe, and even into modern science and education. While Plato looked up to the heavens, Aristotle looked down to earth, finding meaning in nature, purpose in function, and order in complexity. Excellence is a habit. Stoicism. What if peace had nothing to do with your circumstances? Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium in the 3rd century BCE, teaches that we cannot control the world, but we can control how we respond to it. At its core, Stoicism is about mastering the self. Epicurus, once a slave, said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote Meditations as a guide to staying calm, disciplined, and virtuous, even while ruling an empire. The Stoics believed in living according to nature and reason, focusing only on what's within our control: our thoughts, our actions, our values. Today, Stoicism influences everything from modern therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, to leadership training and everyday resilience. In a chaotic world, it's a philosophy of clarity, courage, and calm. Control what you can, endure what you must. 4. Epicureanism. What if the key to happiness was living simply and letting go of fear? Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus in the 3rd century BCE, teaches that true pleasure isn't about indulgence, it's about peace of mind. Epicurus believed that the good life is found in friendship, freedom, and thoughtful reflection. He warned against chasing wealth or fame, which only lead to anxiety. Instead, he encouraged a simple life with modest pleasures and deep conversation. One of his most radical ideas was that death is nothing to fear. He said, "When we exist, death is not, and when death exists, we are not." This helped free people from the fear of punishment in the afterlife. His follower Lucretius later wrote On the Nature of Things to explain the universe in natural terms without superstition. Though often misunderstood as promoting excess, Epicureanism is really about inner calm and wisdom, pleasure but wisely. 5. Cynicism. What if true freedom meant needing nothing at all? Cynicism began with Antisthenes, a student of Socrates in the 4th century BCE, and was made legendary by Diogenes, who lived in a barrel, rejected wealth, and famously searched for an honest man with a lantern in daylight. Cynics believed that society's rules, norms, and desires were unnatural and corrupting. The path to virtue, they said, was through radical simplicity and independence from possessions, status, or public approval. Diogenes mocked social conventions to expose hypocrisy, even confronting Alexander the Great with the words, "Stand out of my sunlight." To the Cynics, freedom came from rejecting artificial needs and living according to nature. Their influence is seen today in minimalist movements, critiques of consumerism, and any voice that says less is more. Freedom through simplicity. 6. Existentialism. What if life has no meaning unless you give it one? Existentialism emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries as a response to a world shaken by war, science, and doubt. Søren Kierkegaard laid its emotional groundwork, but it was Jean-Paul Sartre who made existentialism a movement. Sartre's core idea was, existence precedes essence. That means we are not born with a purpose. We must create one through our actions. Simone de Beauvoir, a key existentialist thinker, explored how freedom, identity, and gender are shaped by choice and responsibility. Albert Camus described life as absurd, a clash between our desire for meaning and the silence of the universe. But he didn't give up. His answer? Revolt. Keep living. Keep choosing. Keep creating. Existentialism teaches that authenticity is found not in rules, but in courageous self-definition. It shaped modern literature, ethics, psychology, and youth culture. Meaning is a decision. 7. Utilitarianism. What if doing good meant doing the most good? In the 18th century, Jeremy Bentham introduced a radical idea, utilitarianism. He argued that morality could be measured. Actions are good if they produce happiness and reduce suffering. Bentham imagined a kind of happiness calculator weighing pleasure against pain. His student, John Stuart Mill, refined this idea further. He believed not all pleasures are equal. Some, like intellectual and moral pleasures, are more valuable than fleeting ones. Utilitarianism challenges us to ask, what helps the greatest number of people? This philosophy has shaped public policy, economics, and ethics. Governments use its logic in everything from healthcare decisions to education funding. But it raises tough questions too. Should we sacrifice a few if it benefits the many? Utilitarianism invites us to see morality not as a feeling, but as a math problem with real-world consequences. Happiness counts. 8. Deontology. What if some actions are right or wrong, no matter the outcome? Deontology, championed by Immanuel Kant in the 18th century, argues that morality isn't about consequences, it's about duty. For Kant, telling the truth is right, even if lying might bring about a better result. His famous principle, the categorical imperative, challenges us to act only on rules we'd want everyone else to follow. In other words, if your action became universal, would the world still work? If not, don't do it. Kant believed moral laws could be discovered through reason, like gravity or geometry. This strict sense of right and wrong became the foundation for modern ideas about justice, rights, and ethics. Deontology reminds us that some values are too important to be traded away, even for good outcomes. Do the right thing, no matter what. 9. Rationalism. What if truth comes not from experience, but from reason itself? Rationalism is the belief that the mind can discover fundamental truths just by thinking. It gained momentum in the 17th century with René Descartes, who famously declared, "I think, therefore I am." Rationalists believe that certain knowledge, like mathematics, ethics, or logic, doesn't come from the senses, but from pure reason. Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz built entire philosophical systems from first principles, trusting the mind over the messiness of experience. Rationalism laid the foundation for the Enlightenment, modern science, and debates about certainty and doubt. It tells us that the universe has a logical structure, and we can uncover it with clear, disciplined thought. In a world flooded with opinions and noise, rationalism reminds us to pause and think. Reason reigns. 10. Empiricism. What if all knowledge begins with experience? Empiricism is the idea that we learn by observing the world, not by reasoning alone. In the 17th and 18th centuries, thinkers like John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume championed this approach. Locke described the mind as a tabula rasa, a blank slate. Everything we know, he argued, comes from what we see, hear, touch, and feel. Berkeley added that existence itself depends on being perceived. And Hume questioned whether we could ever truly know cause and effect, since we only ever observe patterns. Empiricism became the foundation of the scientific method: hypothesis, observation, and evidence. It turned philosophy toward experimentation and helped shape psychology, medicine, and education. Empiricism tells us, look closely, test everything, and let the world reveal its truth. Truth is tested. 11. Humanism. What if the highest value is the human being? Humanism places human dignity, reason, and potential at the center of our moral universe. Its roots stretch back to classical Greece and Rome, but it truly blossomed during the Renaissance, when thinkers like Petrarch and Erasmus rediscovered the power of human agency. Instead of relying on divine authority or tradition, humanists believed in education, critical thinking, and moral progress driven by human effort. In the modern age, figures like Carl Rogers brought humanism into psychology, emphasizing self-actualization and personal growth. Humanism has shaped secular ethics, human rights, liberal democracy, and the idea that every person has inherent worth, regardless of race, class, or creed. In a world full of chaos, humanism offers a simple reminder. We are responsible for creating meaning, justice, and beauty in this life. Humanity first. 12. Materialism. What if everything, even thought, is made of matter? Materialism is the belief that all of reality, including consciousness, is physical. It began with ancient thinkers like Democritus, who imagined the universe as tiny atoms moving in a void. But it gained new force in the modern era with science, neuroscience, and technology. Materialists argue that everything, love, fear, ideas, is the result of physical processes in the brain and body. No spirits, no souls, just matter and energy, obeying laws. In the 19th century, Karl Marx applied this to history, arguing that material conditions, not ideals, drive social change. Materialism shapes medicine, biology, enology, and artificial intelligence today. Critics say it ignores mystery, meaning, and the human spirit, but materialists respond, if it exists, it must leave a trace. Matter matters. Idealism. What if reality begins in the mind? Idealism is the view that consciousness, not matter, is the foundation of everything. While Plato hinted at this with his world of perfect forms, idealism came into full force in the 18th and 19th centuries with philosophers like George Berkeley and Immanuel Kant. Berkeley famously claimed to be is to be perceived, suggesting that existence depends on a perceiving mind. Kant added that we never experience things as they truly are, but only as they appear through the lens of our mental structures. Later, Hegel envisioned all of reality as a process of unfolding ideas and self-awareness. Idealism influenced Romanticism, German philosophy, and even some interpretations of quantum physics. It challenges us to see the world not just as physical, but as deeply shaped by thought, perception, and meaning, mind over matter. 14. Nihilism. What if nothing really matters? Nihilism is the unsettling idea that life has no inherent meaning, value, or purpose. It's often associated with 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who warned that the decline of religion and traditional morality would leave a spiritual vacuum. When Nietzsche said, "God is dead," he wasn't celebrating. It was a wake-up call. Without a higher power or absolute truth, how do we find direction? Nihilism doesn't provide easy answers. Instead, it forces us to confront the void and ask, what now? Some responded with despair, while others, like the existentialists, saw an opportunity. If nothing is given, everything is possible. Meaning must be created, not inherited. Nihilism shows up in modern art, literature, and even internet culture. It's a philosophy of collapse, but also a challenge to rebuild. Beyond meaning lies freedom. 15. Pragmatism. What if truth isn't what's eternal, but what works? Pragmatism is a homegrown American philosophy from the late 19th century that values action, utility, and results. Charles Sanders Peirce, the movement's pioneer, argued that beliefs are rules for action. William James expanded the idea. An idea is true if it proves useful in life. John Dewey took pragmatism into education and democracy, arguing that truth evolves through problem-solving and experience. Rather than abstract principles, pragmatists ask, what works? What helps us grow? Pragmatism has shaped science, law, politics, and everyday decision-making. In a changing world, it offers adaptability without losing grounding, truth that works. 16. Absurdism. What if life's meaninglessness is the starting point, not the end? Absurdism confronts the gap between our deep craving for meaning and the universe's silence. French-Algerian philosopher Albert Camus described this conflict as the absurd. His metaphor, Sisyphus, eternally rolling a boulder uphill, only to watch it roll back down. But Camus didn't offer despair, he offered defiance. He said we must imagine Sisyphus happy because rebellion against meaninglessness is itself meaningful. Absurdism differs from nihilism. It doesn't surrender. It pushes back. It lives in art, literature, and existential courage. Embrace the absurd, live anyway. 17. Structuralism. What if your thoughts aren't your own, but shaped by hidden systems? Structuralism, a 20th century theory rooted in linguistics, began with Ferdinand de Saussure. He argued that language is a system of signs defined by differences. Anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss extended this to myths and culture, showing how stories reflect binary oppositions, light and dark, good and evil. Structuralism tries to uncover the deep structures behind our thoughts, behaviors, and beliefs. It influenced psychology, semiotics, anthropology, and literary theory, revealing how systems shape even our sense of self. Structure beneath the surface. 18. Post-structuralism. What if meaning always slips through your fingers? Post-structuralism emerged in the 1960s as a rebellion against fixed systems and absolute truths. Jacques Derrida's deconstruction revealed how texts contain contradictions that undermine their own meaning. Michel Foucault showed how power and knowledge are intertwined, how truth is shaped by institutions and culture. Post-structuralists challenge us to ask, who defines truth? What voices are excluded? These ideas have influenced gender studies, post-colonial theory, and media criticism. Post-structuralism doesn't provide final answers, but it makes us question everything. Meaning unravels. 19. Anarchism. What if real order came without rulers? Anarchism is not chaos. It's a radical vision of society based on voluntary cooperation and mutual aid. In the 19th century, Pierre-Joseph Proudhon declared, "Property is theft." Mikhail Bakunin and Emma Goldman went further, calling for the dismantling of coercive institutions, state, church, and capital. Anarchism imagines a world without imposed authority, where communities govern themselves. It has inspired revolutionaries, co-ops, digital activists, and decentralized technologies. No masters, just community. Phenomenology. What if reality is how it appears, to you? Phenomenology starts with lived experience. Founded by Edmund Husserl in the early 20th century, it explores how things present themselves in consciousness before any theory or interpretation. Martin Heidegger expanded it into the question of being itself. Maurice Merleau-Ponty explored how our bodies shape our perception of the world. Phenomenology has influenced psychology, art, existentialism, and cognitive science. It reminds us, before objectivity, there is experience. Begin with being. 21. Taoism. What if the best way to act was not to act? Taoism, founded by Laozi in 6th century BCE China, teaches us to live in harmony with the Tao, the way, the natural flow of life. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi describes Wu Wei, effortless action like water flowing around obstacles. Taoism values humility, spontaneity, and letting go of control. It shaped Chinese medicine, martial arts, and Zen Buddhism. In a modern world of striving and stress, Taoism whispers something different: yield, relax, and return to the way. Flow with the Tao.